To speak of past lives is to step into a river whose waters flow in two directions at once. On one hand, it is a stream of memory, carrying with it the echoes of selves that once wore faces, names, and histories long since dissolved into the fabric of time. On the other hand, it is a current of forgetting, a deliberate washing away of what was, so that what is might have room to grow. To wonder about the reason you forgot your past lives is to stand at the edge of this river and recognize both currents, the forward rush of becoming and the backward pull of remembrance. And yet, the truth is not found in choosing between remembering and forgetting, but in understanding why forgetting was necessary in the first place. Most imagine that to forget is a loss, that memory is a kind of treasure chest from which we have been unfairly barred. But forgetting has always been more than absence. It is a force of its own, a shaping principle, a veil woven not by accident but by design. The absence of memory creates the space in which new life can unfold, much like the silence between notes gives music its shape. In this sense, your forgetting of past lives is not a failure of recall, not a punishment for some hidden error, but a gift of immeasurable significance, a hidden architecture upon which your current existence has been built. The modern mind often seeks explanations in terms of science, brain chemistry, or neurological wiring, and it is true that the biology of memory is intricate. But the forgetting of past lives cannot be contained by such frames, for it is not simply about neurons failing to transmit information. It is cosmic in scale, a matter of the soul choosing, or perhaps being guided, into a state of unknowing for purposes larger than any single incarnation could hold. To understand this forgetting is to glimpse the deep design of existence itself, why consciousness dawns and sheds identities, the way stars burn and collapse, the way forests grow and decay. Forgetting is not a crack in the wall of the self, but the wall itself, necessary to hold the house of your current identity together. Consider the metaphor of a stage. Each life is a performance, and the actor steps upon the stage with a costume, a script, and a role to embody. If the actor were to remember too vividly every role they have ever played, the performance before us would dissolve into confusion. Hamlet would break into lines from King Lear, Juliet would grieve for a husband lost in some other tale, and the play would collapse under the weight of tangled identities. The forgetting of past lives is the drawing of the curtain, the dimming of the lights, the cleansing of the stage so that this new story might unfold in its purity. Without it, no drama could be genuine, no choice could feel fresh, no love could feel like discovery. And yet, forgetting does not mean erasure. Memory of past lives is not obliterated but transmuted. What you once were still lives in you, though not in the neat and literal form of recollected detail. Instead, it pulses through your instincts, your inexplicable affinities, the fears you cannot trace to this lifetime, the skills that emerge unbidden as though you had learned them before. Past lives speak through resonance rather than recollection, through pattern rather than story. The violinist who touches the strings for the first time and feels a strange familiarity, the child who meets a stranger and feels they have known them for centuries, these are fragments of the great hidden archive, scattered like seeds across the soil of forgetting. The real question, then, is not whether you have lived before, but why the structure of existence is such that you cannot remember it plainly. Why the veil? Why the silence? Why the design of a cosmos that grants continuity of soul but demands discontinuity of memory? These questions carry us into a realm where philosophy, spirituality, and psychology intermingle, where myth and metaphor are as necessary as analysis. For this forgetting is not random, not cruel, but purposeful, and in that purpose lies a deeper truth about the nature of life itself. To forget one's past lives is to be born anew into the great experiment of becoming human. Forgetting allows you to take the weight of infinite existence and compress it into the urgency of one moment, one lifetime. If you could remember the sorrows of 1,000 deaths, the betrayals of 100 friends, the griefs of countless losses, how could you ever open your heart again? Forgetting makes love possible by letting you risk the heart anew. Forgetting makes courage possible by letting you face dangers without the paralyzing knowledge of all the times you have failed before. Forgetting makes growth possible by creating the illusion of beginning, even when you are as ancient as the stars themselves. In this way, forgetting is both mercy and discipline. It spares you from the unbearable weight of eternity while also sharpening your attention to the present. Without forgetting, your consciousness would scatter like light diffused in fog, unable to focus on the task before you. With forgetting, life condenses into clarity, into lessons specific to this incarnation. Forgetting ensures that each life matters in itself, not only as a fragment of a greater mosaic. And yet, it is precisely because each life matters that the larger pattern exists, a pattern you are only meant to glimpse indirectly, like a shadow seen on the wall. This is not to say that the veil of forgetting is impenetrable. At times, it thins. In dreams that feel older than your body, in meditations where images rise that you cannot explain, in déjà vu so strong it rattles your bones, in the eyes of another where you swear you recognize yourself. These are moments when the river of forgetting bends just enough to let you taste the waters beneath. But such glimpses are fleeting, for the deeper purpose is not to dwell in the past but to inhabit the now with fullness. The forgotten lives shape you not through conscious recall but through hidden inheritance, and the challenge of the human journey is to trust that this unseen inheritance is real even when the mind cannot grasp it. To begin exploring the real reason you forgot your past lives is therefore to take a step beyond curiosity. It is to question the very fabric of existence, the architecture of memory, and the purpose of being human. It is to look at your own mind not merely as a container of experiences but as a carefully woven veil that allows you to live this story without collapsing under the immensity of all stories. It is to understand that forgetting is not a flaw but a law, and that the veil itself may hold more wisdom than the memories it conceals. And so we arrive at the threshold of this exploration, the recognition that forgetting is not mere absence but sacred design, a veil drawn for your own becoming. To walk deeper into this mystery is to uncover the themes and concepts that lie at its heart, the principles that explain why forgetting is necessary and how it shapes the course of your life. These themes reveal themselves not in fragments but as a living tapestry, threads of psychology and spirituality woven together into something larger than either could hold alone. If the introduction was the first step into the river of forgetting, then now we must wade deeper, allowing the current to reveal the forces that move beneath its surface. The forgetting of past lives is not an isolated curiosity but a reflection of fundamental patterns, principles that shape not only memory but existence itself. To explore these themes is to peel back the veil of the ordinary and see the hidden architecture of reality, the scaffolding upon which both forgetting and remembering are constructed. The first and perhaps most vital theme is that of identity. Every life you live is a crystallization of identity, a form that consciousness takes for a time before dissolving again into the formless. If you remembered all your past identities in vivid detail, you would never fully settle into the one you wear now. Imagine trying to be wholly yourself while a chorus of 1,000 former selves clamored for recognition inside your mind. Identity would fragment into chaos, and the coherence of the present incarnation would dissolve. Forgetting, therefore, is what allows you to become. It is the pruning of the vast tree of self so that one branch may grow fully toward the sun. Yet identity is only one strand of the weave. Another is the principle of limitation. To be human is to step into a world of boundaries, where infinity compresses into finitude. You cannot see all times at once, cannot hold all knowledge, cannot be everywhere simultaneously. These limitations are not flaws of existence but the very conditions that make experience possible. Just as a painter must accept the frame of a canvas in order to create, so must the soul accept the frame of forgetting in order to live. Without the narrowing of awareness, life would spill into shapelessness, and the specific lessons of this incarnation would be lost. Forgetting is one of the most essential limitations, sculpting the vastness of eternity into the sharpness of this moment. There is also the theme of cycles, the eternal rhythm of birth, death, and rebirth. Each life is not an isolated island but part of an ongoing spiral. The forgetting between lives is like the pause between breaths, the stillness that allows the next inhale to be new. Without the pause, there would be no rhythm, only an unbroken stream that overwhelms rather than nourishes. Forgetting is the silence that allows the music of existence to carry on. It punctuates the eternal with intervals of renewal, creating not endless monotony but the possibility of genuine transformation. We must also speak of illusion, for forgetting is bound up with the illusions of the world you inhabit. The human mind is drawn into the game of appearances, into the roles and narratives that define a lifetime. If you carried with you the full memory of all past lives, the illusion would collapse, and with it the very intensity of the game. You would walk through life like an actor who already knows the ending of the play, disengaged, untouched, unmoved. The veil of forgetting preserves the sanctity of illusion, and through that illusion, you are able to experience reality as though it were entirely new. And it is this sense of newness, of believing fully in the immediacy of life, that allows you to grow in ways you could not if you were burdened with omniscience. But there is a paradox here, and paradox is itself another guiding theme. For while forgetting preserves illusion, it also gestures toward truth. The very ache of forgetting, the longing to remember, the sense of something lost, becomes a compass pointing beyond the limits of the present identity. The veil conceals, but in concealing, it hints at the existence of something beyond it. In this way, forgetting becomes not merely a limitation but an invitation, a riddle placed at the heart of existence. To forget is to feel the pull of mystery, to sense that the self is deeper than the story it currently inhabits. Thus, forgetting does not imprison you but challenges you, compelling you to seek the truth that lies hidden beneath appearances. Here, another theme arises, the law of mercy. If memory were unbroken, the human spirit would be crushed beneath the unbearable weight of accumulated sorrow. Think of the grief of losing a loved one. It carves deep furrows into the heart, sometimes so deep they never fully heal. Now multiply that grief by 100, by 1,000, by all the lives you have ever lived. To carry such weight consciously would be impossible. Forgetting is mercy, allowing the soul to set down its burdens and begin again unencumbered. The scars remain, transmuted into instincts and tendencies, but the raw pain is veiled so that you might love again, risk again, hope again. Forgetting is the balm that makes rebirth bearable. Closely linked to mercy is the theme of growth. Life is a school, and each incarnation is a classroom with its own curriculum. To learn the lessons of this room, you cannot be perpetually distracted by memories of the lessons of the last. The forgetting ensures that you approach each life as though it were your first, with fresh eyes and a heart unjaded by ancient sorrows. And yet, the wisdom of past lessons is not lost, it is carried forward in subtler ways, embedded in the unconscious, shaping your choices without dictating them. Forgetting, therefore, does not erase growth but refines it, ensuring that each lesson is absorbed not as rote knowledge but as lived transformation. Underlying all these themes is one more fundamental than any other, the sovereignty of the present. The now is not simply one moment among many but the axis upon which the entire wheel of existence turns. Forgetting past lives anchors you into the present moment, preventing you from drifting endlessly into the corridors of eternity. The real purpose of life is always now, this breath, this choice, this incarnation. Forgetting is the law that enforces this focus, ensuring that you do not squander the present by drowning in the infinite expanse of what has been. Taken together, these themes reveal a picture both intricate and humbling. Identity requires forgetting to cohere. Limitation makes experience possible. Cycles demand pauses of renewal. Illusion preserves the freshness of becoming. Paradox invites the seeker to go beyond appearances. Mercy protects the soul from unbearable weight. Growth requires veils so that each lesson may be fully lived. And the sovereignty of the present ensures that all these forces converge into the miracle of this life, here and now. When we speak of the real reason you forgot your past lives, then, we are not speaking of a single explanation but of a constellation of truths, each orbiting the mystery from a different angle. Forgetting is at once necessity, mercy, limitation, and invitation. It is both the condition of life and the whisper of what lies beyond life. To hold all these truths at once is to glimpse the profound elegance of the design, the wisdom of a cosmos that asks you to forget not as punishment but as preparation, not as deprivation but as initiation. The themes we have explored here are the bones of the mystery, the structural elements that support the deeper narratives to come. But bones alone do not make a body, they require flesh, story, and breath. To move forward is to clothe these themes in symbolism and myth, to see how the truths of forgetting have been told and retold in the language of allegory across ages and traditions. Themes and concepts alone can shimmer with clarity, but the soul often hungers for more than abstraction. It craves stories, symbols, and images that carry truth not only into the mind but into the marrow of being. The human spirit understands in symbols what the intellect can only gesture toward, it digests paradox through allegory and myth. And so, to explore the deeper reality of why you forgot your past lives, we must step into the realm of story, where truth wears the clothing of imagination and metaphor becomes the bridge to comprehension. Let us begin with the ancient image of the river of Lethe from Greek mythology. In the underworld, souls who were destined to be reborn were said to drink from the waters of Lethe, the river of forgetting. A sip, and the weight of old lives dissolved into mist, leaving the soul fresh and unburdened, ready to enter a new body. At first glance, this seems cruel. Why strip away the richness of what has been lived? But the Greeks understood something essential. Without forgetting, rebirth would not be rebirth at all, but merely continuation. A soul who remembers too much cannot begin again, it drags its chains into the next life, entangled, heavy, unable to move freely. Forgetting is the baptism of the soul, washing away what was so that what is can unfold. A similar story appears in Eastern traditions. In Chinese mythology, before reincarnation, souls would drink the tea of Mengpe, the Lady of Forgetfulness, which erased memories of previous lives. Only then could they cross the bridge into the human world. What seems like deprivation in one light becomes a sacred ritual in another, the deliberate emptying of the vessel so it can be filled anew. Here, forgetting is not punishment but ritual purification, a necessary passage for the soul's journey through cycles of existence. These myths echo across cultures because they point to a truth so immense that only symbolic language can hold it. To remember everything would be to carry an unbearable burden, and to forget is to be freed for transformation. Yet the stories also suggest something deeper, that forgetting is not absolute. In some versions of these myths, a soul might drink only lightly from the river or sip only part of the tea, leaving behind a trace of memory, a faint shadow of what was. This shadow becomes intuition, déjà vu, the sense of recognition that punctuates our lives with mystery. Forgetting, then, is never complete, it is veiling, not erasing. It is like a gauze drawn over the window, through which light still passes, distorted but present. Let us consider another allegory, one that lives in the silence of seeds. Imagine a vast tree that drops its seeds across the earth. Each seed contains the entire history of the tree, encoded in its being, yet when it begins to sprout, it does not recall the branches and leaves of its parent. It does not remember the storms it endured, the winds that bent it, the blossoms it bore. And yet, all of that is present within the seed, transmuted into the pattern of its growth. Forgetting, in this image, is not the loss of history but the translation of history into form. The seed carries its past not as memory but as destiny, not as story but as structure. In the same way, your past lives live within you not as recollections but as tendencies, talents, resistances, and yearnings. The forgetting makes you a seed, free to grow anew, while still shaped by the tree of eternity that bore you. There is also the story of the actor's mask, drawn from the traditions of theater. In ancient plays, masks allowed actors to embody new characters fully, transforming their voices, gestures, and presence. But to play the role authentically, the actor had to surrender the memory of their own face, to inhabit the mask as though it were their true identity. Forgetting, in this sense, is not deception but immersion. If you remembered at every moment that you were only acting, the role would lose its authenticity. Similarly, life requires immersion. The forgetting of past lives is the mask you wear so that this performance might be real, so that you might believe fully in its stakes, its joys, and its sorrows. When the play ends, the mask is removed, and memory returns. But during the play, forgetting is what makes the drama real. Another narrative is found in dreams. Each night, you enter worlds of strange continuity and sudden rupture. In dreams, you often forget who you are, where you live, what your story is. You take on roles with utter conviction, only to awaken and discover that your identity was but a passing illusion. Yet within the dream, the forgetting is essential. Without it, the dream could not unfold with such intensity. So too with life, incarnation is a dream of the soul, and forgetting is the dream's logic, making you believe in this world as though it were the only one. To awaken is to remember, but while you dream, the forgetting is the condition of the experience itself. And then, there is the grand allegory of the cosmic library. Imagine that every life you have lived is a book upon a shelf in a vast library beyond time. Each volume is detailed, full of story, of triumph and tragedy, of choices and consequences. Before birth, you stand within this library, and you know that to carry all these books into the next chapter would be impossible. So you choose one, and the rest are sealed away behind golden doors. You walk into the world carrying only the faint resonance of the library, not the words themselves. And yet, every choice you make echoes with the unseen weight of those sealed volumes. The forgetting is the lock on the door of the library, keeping you from being drowned in pages you have already read. But the library itself is never destroyed, and one day, when your journey has ripened, you may enter again. What do all these symbols, the river, the tea, the seed, the mask, the dream, the library, have in common? They all suggest that forgetting is never arbitrary. It is woven into the very fabric of existence, a deliberate condition set upon the soul so that growth, immersion, and transformation might be possible. They remind us that forgetting is not void but veil, not destruction but translation. They show that behind the veil lies continuity, but the veil itself is sacred, a guardian of the present incarnation's authenticity. And yet, the stories also whisper that forgetting is not absolute. Cracks appear in the veil. Memories leak through in dreams, flashes, inexplicable affinities. Symbols themselves are these cracks, carrying fragments of truth across the barrier. Every myth of forgetting is simultaneously a myth of remembering, for to speak of a veil is already to hint at what lies behind it. Forgetting protects, but it also provokes the longing that drives you toward awakening. The symbolic narratives are not merely decoration but medicine. They allow the heart to hold what the mind cannot fully explain. They remind us that forgetting is not a flaw to be corrected but a mystery to be honored. To see the veil not as prison but as teacher is to approach life with reverence, recognizing that the very limits you experience are the conditions of your becoming. To reflect on the symbolic narratives of forgetting is to glimpse the grandeur of a hidden architecture. But if the mystery of forgetting past lives is to mean anything, it must reach beyond myth into the marrow of daily existence. Philosophy that remains in the clouds becomes a spectacle without weight. The veil of forgetting was not placed over you so that you could merely ponder it, but so that you could live fully within it. The practical task is to ask, how does this mystery shape the way you move through your days, how does it color your choices, and how can its wisdom be integrated into the texture of ordinary life? The first and perhaps most immediate implication is that forgetting compels you into presence. If you cannot cling to the details of lives gone by, you are pressed more firmly into the soil of the present one. The forgotten past is like a locked door, and rather than exhausting yourself in trying to force it open, the wiser path is to turn your attention to the room you now inhabit. This lifetime, with all its difficulties and delights, becomes the arena in which your growth is meant to unfold. To live as though this incarnation is your only chance, while recognizing deep within that it is one of many, is to balance urgency with perspective. You are freed from paralysis by the weight of eternity and invited into the immediacy of now. But presence does not mean blindness to the traces of what came before. Though you may not remember your past lives in detail, their imprint is alive in you. This shows itself in the peculiar pull of certain passions, the immediate resonance you feel with certain people, the irrational fear of a place or situation, the unexplainable mastery of a skill. To integrate the wisdom of forgetting means to treat these patterns not as accidents but as whispers of continuity. You cannot force memory, but you can honor resonance. When something calls to you with unusual intensity, it may be an echo of what you once lived. To listen to those echoes is to cooperate with the hidden wisdom of your soul's trajectory. Another implication lies in the way you approach suffering. To forget past lives is to enter each new incarnation without conscious knowledge of why certain difficulties arise. The soul carries its history, but the mind does not, and so pain often feels arbitrary. But if you remember that forgetting is a veil and not an erasure, then suffering can be reframed as part of a larger curriculum, even if its roots are invisible. You may not know why you are walking through a particular trial, but you can trust that the trial has meaning, that it is woven into a greater tapestry beyond your current sight. This does not eliminate pain, but it transforms despair into patience, resignation into resilience. The veil also reshapes how you relate to others. Imagine that every person you meet is, like you, an ancient soul wrapped in the forgetting of a new incarnation. They may not recall the history you have shared, but something of it lingers in the way you feel inexplicably drawn to them or strangely repelled. To recognize this is to move with greater compassion. The stranger who irritates you, the friend who feels like kin from the first moment, the lover whose connection seems timeless, these are all expressions of the deep continuity hidden behind the veil. To act with kindness toward others, then, is to honor not just who they are in this lifetime but who they have been across countless lifetimes. Forgetting ensures that each new meeting feels fresh, but wisdom reminds you that nothing is ever entirely new. The practical lesson extends, too, into how you hold ambition, desire, and achievement. If you remembered every skill and triumph from your past lives, the urgency to learn and strive might vanish. Why practice patience if you already remember mastering it once before? Why learn music if you recall being a virtuoso centuries ago? Forgetting renews desire, makes effort meaningful again. It allows you to engage with learning as though it were for the first time, igniting the fire of discovery. This is why it is important to approach your goals not with the cynicism of someone who suspects they have seen it all before, but with the curiosity of a soul who knows that even repeated lessons can be lived more deeply each time. Forgetting ensures that effort remains alive. And yet, there is also a practical dimension in glimpses of remembering. Whether through meditation, dreams, or moments of inexplicable recognition, the veil can sometimes thin. Integrating these moments requires balance. If you chase them obsessively, trying to reconstruct the entirety of your soul's library, you risk losing touch with the immediacy of this life. But if you ignore them entirely, you may close yourself off to the guidance they bring. The art is to treat them as subtle signposts rather than ultimate destinations. They are like constellations glimpsed through cloud cover. You need not chart every star to know that a greater pattern exists, and sometimes a single glimpse is enough to orient your path. The forgetting also has ethical implications. If you believe this life was your only chance, you might act with desperation, clinging to pleasure, hoarding, fearing loss as annihilation. If you remembered all your past lives vividly, you might act with detachment, viewing this existence as a mere episode with little consequence. Forgetting places you between these extremes. It gives this life weight without finality, urgency without despair. You are free to act as though your choices matter, because they do, while also trusting that your soul is greater than any single failure. This balance cultivates humility and courage together. Finally, the veil of forgetting can be integrated into the way you approach meaning itself. If life were merely a sequence of memories extending backward without pause, it would lose its sharpness, its sense of story. Forgetting is what creates the shape of narrative, the arc of a single lifetime. The meaning of your existence is intensified by the very fact that you do not remember everything. You must seek meaning within this life, not merely borrow it from the past. Forgetting, then, compels you into creativity. You are invited to craft purpose here, to carve significance from the raw stone of the present moment, to live this life as though it were the most important chapter in the book of your soul. In all these ways, presence, resonance, patience, compassion, effort, balance, ethics, and meaning, the veil of forgetting is not only a cosmic principle but a daily teacher. It shapes how you love, how you suffer, how you learn, and how you act. To integrate its wisdom is to live with both reverence and lightness, knowing that you are ancient but also brand new, eternal but also fragile, part of a story so vast it must be lived one chapter at a time. To arrive at the end of this journey is to circle back to its beginning, but with new eyes. We began with the question of why you forgot your past lives, and along the way we have uncovered themes, symbols, and practical implications that suggest forgetting is not a flaw but a design, not deprivation but initiation. Yet a final conclusion must do more than summarize. It must call you to transformation, to inhabit the mystery of forgetting not as an intellectual puzzle but as a lived path. The truth is that forgetting is itself a teacher. It teaches you to live as though this life is the only one, even as some part of you senses the infinite behind it. It calls you to hold both urgency and spaciousness, to pour yourself into the immediacy of your days while recognizing that eternity whispers beneath their surface. To forget your past lives is to be thrust into an experiment where love, courage, and growth must be chosen without certainty, without the crutch of memory. This is the essence of freedom. If you remembered everything, your choices might feel predetermined by knowledge. But forgetting restores the risk of discovery, and through risk, authentic transformation. The veil you wear is both fragile and indestructible. Fragile, because it can thin in dreams, in sudden flashes of recognition, in the uncanny resonance of meeting a stranger who feels like kin. Indestructible, because its ultimate purpose is to protect the sanctity of your current incarnation. To live beneath this veil is not to be blind, but to be focused, sharpened like light through a lens. It is the narrowing of infinity into the miracle of now. And yet, the call of forgetting is not only to inhabit the present but to honor the longing that forgetting produces. The ache you sometimes feel, the sense that you are more than this life, that you have walked these roads before, that some vast memory stirs just beyond reach, is not a mistake. It is the compass of your soul. Forgetting invites you to remember not with the mind but with the heart. You may never recall the names or faces of your past selves, but you can embody the wisdom they earned by living with greater compassion, courage, and depth today. This is remembering at its highest form, not nostalgia for details but incarnation of wisdom. So the call is this: live as though this life is the only one, while loving as though you have lived 1,000. Meet each person as though your soul recognizes them, because it likely does. Face your challenges with the patience of one who has walked through fire before, because you have. Approach your joys with the innocence of one who is encountering beauty for the first time, because in a sense, you are. Let forgetting sharpen your presence, but let the longing to remember deepen your reverence. The transformational power of this understanding lies in the way it dissolves despair. To know that forgetting is not exile but design is to trust that life is not random, that there is an intelligence at work beneath the veils. You are not stumbling through darkness abandoned, you are being guided by a law that ensures each chapter of your journey can be lived in fullness. The suffering you endure, the love you risk, the growth you pursue, all of it matters precisely because the veil allows it to feel new. And one day, when this life's curtain falls, you will step beyond it and see the continuity of all you have been. The forgetting will dissolve, and you will recognize that nothing was truly lost. But the deepest transformation does not come from waiting for that unveiling at death. It comes from choosing to live now with the wisdom that forgetting itself imparts. To be fully present, to honor resonance, to act with compassion, to endure trials with trust, to create meaning as though it were your sacred task, these are the ways you honor the veil. Forgetting does not ask you to remain blind, it asks you to see differently, to shift from clinging to memory toward embodying presence. And so the invitation is clear: do not curse the forgetting. Do not waste your days longing only to pierce the veil. Instead, honor it. Treat it as a teacher. Recognize that the reason you forgot your past lives is the same reason a seed forgets the tree it came from, so it might grow into its own fullness. Recognize that the reason you forgot your past lives is the same reason an actor forgets their own name on stage, so the play might be real. Recognize that the reason you forgot is not to diminish you but to liberate you, to grant you the sacred chance to live this life as though it were the first and only. And in doing so, paradoxically, you begin to remember, not through facts or names or histories, but through wisdom, presence, and love. You remember in the way you live, in the way you give, in the way you face the unknown. For the truest remembering is not recollection but transformation. This is the call, to honor the veil, to live this life with depth, and to trust that forgetting is the secret doorway through which the soul finds its freedom.